Them all.
All right.
It's not that
Welcome
common.
everyone. Welcome our True Blue fans in the audience. We're live streaming on Facebook Live right now, I think. And this is Awareness Film Festival 2017. And this is the storytelling panel, turning your experiences into a film. And we have three lovely filmmakers here that are going to tell us all about their experiences. And if you could just start with introducing yourself and your film, and we'll just go down the row, and we'll proceed from there.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Schomer, and it's a docu-series called The Road to Dharma. So this is episode 1 that's showing, and the essence of it is a search for freedom, and it takes place in the backdrop of a motorcycle journey through the Himalayas to 4 sacred sites that represent parts of freedom. So we have a radical, charismatic young yogi that likes to ride motorcycles from India and takes a group of 7 riders and 7 passengers into their fears, into the jails of their minds, into the people on the verge of divorce, just learning to ride. A lot of drama that you would see in a show, but a lot of wisdom that you would glean from India.
Oh, okay. And so how does this tie into your personal experience?
I'm a motorcycle rider in it. My first documentary film is called The Highest Pass. We went over the highest road in the world on motorcycles with the same guru. So we took the success of that was released theatrically, and said, let's make a docu-series, new people, new journey, more time to get into everything, people's experiences as well as my own experience and the wisdom. So this is like kind of a sequel taken in another direction.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's all, the first one was really told from mostly my point of view. And this one, we use me as a narrator to keep it going, but it's definitely more focused on the group.
Okay, and how many were in your group?
There's 7 riders, 7 passengers, 14. But it mainly focuses on the 7 riders and the guru. All right.
So I'm Kaya Rose, a filmmaker based in New York, and mine is also a series, 1 episode in a web series called Climate Countdown. And we basically map out the ecology of climate solutions. So I started it at the beginning of 2015. I found out about this big climate summit happening in Paris at the end of 2015 of COP21. And I had no idea what it was, but I was being told that it was this chance to really turn things around. So I thought, well, if I don't know what it is, then I'm sure lots of other people don't know what it is. So I started asking questions, and I ended up in the series because I really knew very little. So I was learning along with the audience and trying to kind of break through the jargon. There's a lot of jargon in the climate world, starting with the name COP21 is already jargon. So I was trying to kind of break through that and figure out how you could tell the story of solutions to people who don't know anything about it. So the episode that we're showing here is called Carbon Pricing, which is about just that. It's the solution of carbon pricing, which really addresses the cause of climate change and kind of elevates everyone's solutions. So it's something I've actually become very passionate about in my own work. I volunteer and lobby Congress for carbon pricing. So it's something I've kind of really gotten behind and I'm happy to share.
Wow, inspiring. Inspiring. And was there any personal experience that drew you to the subject of climate change and to this summit?
It really was finding out that there were solutions. And I think we hear a lot about how scary it is, which is true.
And it's big, it's a planetary issue.
It's a planetary issue. It's, it's very urgent, and you hear a lot of the doom and gloom. And most documentaries I've seen and kind of covered try to scare you into action. And that's, for me, that's not how I get inspired to act.
It's probably not your best action either when you're scared.
Exactly.
You don't make the best choices.
You kind of turn off and go, I don't want to think about it because it's too big and too scary and I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So we started from the point of, okay, so it's happening. It's affecting all of us. We need to do something about it because we're humans and we like to survive and we're adaptable. So what are we doing about it? Let's do it. So that was kind of the starting point. And for me, that's how I like to think about things. And we use Post-its to kind of map out how these solutions fit together, which again is how my brain works. So it really was kind of focused around, or inspired by, how would I be inspired to act on this? And hopefully I can reach other people that are kind of my generation, my kind of mindset to act as well.
More effective to share your inspiration than your fear.
Exactly. Yeah.
My name is Sarah Gamp. I'm originally from Sweden, Stockholm, and my film is called The Bus Trip. My film is an animated.
Can you speak up a little? The bus tour?
The Bus Trip.
The bus trip. Okay.
And it's an animated documentary, and it takes place in Israel and Palestine. So my film is like I did a trip in Israel and Palestine 3 years ago. I went to a film festival to show an older film, and when I came home from this trip, I sort of felt that I needed to do something with this. I didn't plan on doing this film, but I started writing and I started working on it. And this film is about my thoughts and feelings and opinions about Israel and Palestine and the occupation there, as well as my Jewish identity. So I mixed that up with my experiences in Israel and on the West Bank, together with my Jewish family history, which is being Polish Jews in Sweden.
Interesting. And how many generations? When did your family emigrate to Sweden?
So both my parents emigrated from Poland to Sweden. My mother did it during the 80s, and my father during early 70s, while there was a big anti-Semitic campaigns in Poland at that time. So a lot of Jews moved from a lot of them to Sweden, just like my dad, together with his parents.
And then you were born in Sweden.
Yes.
Interesting. So, how do you find it? Do you find you have more of a European self-identity or more of a Israeli-Jewish self-identity?
Oh, it's I'd say definitely European, Swedish, European, Jewish.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how was that going to Israel? What were the contrasts? What were the differences sort of in worldview? Because we all have, like, again, Israel-Palestine is a big topic and it's a global issue sort of. We hear about it on the news a lot. It seems like this big but also far away type of situation. So it's interesting for you to tell us what your personal experiences are taking a European worldview to Israel.
Yeah, so I also thought, because it's a big topic in Sweden as well, so I thought naturally, and I've been following it because I'm Jewish, so I take interest in what's happening there. And I thought I knew what was going on because I thought, well, I've been following this. But when I came there, I discovered, like, I know nothing. This is nothing what I thought it would be like.
Very different there than what
Yes.
you hear in Europe or here in the States.
Yes.
So could you tell us like a specific difference? What is specific?
Like most of us, I thought, like we hear a lot of bad things happening there, but still I felt it is so much worse than I thought.
When you got there,
Yes.
it was actually worse than what we hear on the news.
Yes, that was my experience.
Okay.
Also, I also thought it would be easier for me to meet people there that are sort of working for a solution, working for peace. And there are, of course, people there, but it was not so easy to find them at that time.
In what way? Like they're just not public about it, or is it more of a tense issue because it's an ongoing conflict?
Yeah, it's a tense issue, and not everyone is fine about talking about it and not interested in talking about it. Then I thought it was being like, or what I'm used to in Sweden is that you just talk.
So there's more of sort of an air of debate and sort of an intellectual consideration of the issues in Europe versus maybe a more emotional, more personal feeling to what's going on with the people that are actually there
Yeah, I
in
think,
the conflict.
yeah, because when I went there for a festival, everyone told me, oh, we didn't know you made a film about Israel and Palestine. At that time I hadn't. I made like an animated film about spiders. And that was what I was going to show, you know?
Right.
So everyone's kind of, like when you say Israel, everyone's thinking about the conflict.
Right.
But there people want to just live their lives.
Right.
That's it.
Did you have a chance to go to the West Bank? Did you also speak to Palestinian people about it?
Yes.
And did you find that also that people were more sort of reluctant to step forward and have an opinion, or were they more?
On the West Bank, it was the opposite. So,
They wanted to talk.
yeah, they
Right.
want to talk about it a lot because of their situation, being occupied. They need to talk. Like they don't have a choice.
Right. Right. That's good. Interesting. And so you said this is an animated film. That's a little interesting for a documentary. How do you combine the two elements? Since animation is sort of purely crafted and documentary is drawn from reality experiences, are you... I'm sorry, I wish I had seen the film, bad moderator. Could you tell us how you combine that element with documentary and animation?
Yeah, so visually I mix documentary footage with, so most of my backgrounds are film and like photographs that I took while I was there. And then all the characters are animated. And all the dialogue is taken from my memory. So it's a very subjective documentary.
Interesting.
And I also add a lot of like fantasy animated elements into it just to highlight like my emotions or the main character's emotions.
So this is really a personal journey about this experience.
Yes.
Okay. If the filmmakers are good with their statements, we can open it up to our lovely audience for a question or two.
I have a practical question, just to be clear. Have some of the, I know your films are shown too. Has yours already been shown?
No. So my film is showing today at 4 o'clock.
The Road to Dharma will show at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
On Sunday.
On Sunday, yes. Sunday at 2 o'clock.
And Climate Countdown will be 2 o'clock today, so just after this meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. And yours is at 4 o'clock today.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, tell me the title again.
The bus
The
trip.
bus trip.
It's kind of
Short trip.
very short. Yeah, the whole series is meant to be shared online and kind of something people watch in their lunch break. Or, it's not too scary to digest. We want it to be easily digestible.
Right.
Yeah.
My film is 14 minutes.
Oh,
So it's short.
have you been to other festivals? Any of you?
Yes, so I've been screening my film for almost 2 years.
Oh wow.
And I would say all over the world.
Uh-huh.
I'm lucky with that. I try to send it to as many places as possible. So of course in Sweden, where I'm from, and I've shown it in Poland, Germany, Portugal, Japan.
Wow.
I went there.
Oh my God.
Indonesia, Brazil, Panama, here in the States. East Coast.
That's
and
quite
West
a
You're on a
tour.
world tour.
Wow.
Literally. Have you? And how's the reception been at some of these far away places?
Yeah, it's very. I mean, I don't go to all of them, but some of them do Skype Q&As, which is very nice. And it's also interesting because they all focus on different things from my films. Because it's both about Israel and Palestine, so focus on that, but it's also about being Jewish and a bit about anti-Semitism. So some people focus more on that.
And so for the two filmmakers that are doing series, are you taking these to a platform or a distributor? Are we going to be able to find your series somewhere in the sphere?
We're actually, so the whole of season 1 of Climate Countdown is online. And then
a website?
climatecountdown.org.
That's climatecountdown.org.
And we're actually entering into production on season 2 right now. So season 1 was mapping out the ecology of climate solutions in the lead up to the Paris Agreement, and kind of what did we need to do to make that a success. We were in Paris for the agreement to happen. We got a great agreement, and then I went to the next climate summit, COP22 in Marrakesh, the following year, which was immediately after the election. And so it was a very different world, and it is a very different landscape now. So season 2 is looking at, now that the federal government is exiting the Paris Agreement and backing away from climate action in general, what strategies do we need to move climate action forward? So we're really looking at kind of what are people doing strategically. People are taking it to the courts. They're suing the government. There's a group of kids that are suing the government.
I love that.
Yeah, so we're talking
I love
to
that
them.
action of the kids. Like,
Yeah.
this is our future, right? The young ones, they need to be angry about this.
And you don't have the right to take it away from us.
Right.
So taking it to the courts, taking it to the streets, taking on the risks, what are financial markets doing? So we're looking at each episode.
Universities have been pressured into divesting from fossil fuels
Yeah, we actually have an
because of student
episode.
action.
We have an episode on divestment in season 1. Yeah, I talked to people at Columbia, Yale. So yeah, there's lots of things that people are working on, which is, I think, inspiring, and I think it's good to think about it in this kind of strategic way of how are we going to make this work? And you need all of these people pushing different buttons at once, and you need everyone working on different solutions. But I think it helps as an audience member too, and it's helped me to figure out kind of, not everyone needs to be a climate scientist or a politician. There's climate change is something that it goes through every aspect of our lives, and so the solutions do as well. So you can kind of, as we hope, is as you watch season 1 and then season 2, you kind of find from your own passions and your own skill set how you can slot into the solution making.
Oh, wonderful. And are all the episodes 5-minute shorts or some of them longer?
Some of them, it's like between 5 and 12 minutes.
And how many episodes in your season 1?
Season 1 had 16 episodes, and season 2 will be 10 or 11.
And they'll also be on the climatecountdown.org.
ClimateCountdown.org.
Wonderful. I know.
ClimateCountdown.org.
Just making
We
sure.
love it. Make sure we all got that, everyone. You like your oxygen? Go on this website.
You like your oxygen.
I do. I like to
And my
breathe.
water and my trees.
And my water, my trees.
Yeah.
I'm all good with that.
Yeah.
This is good.
Just
It
survival.
does. Feels good to
Survival
breathe,
in general.
My health and my genetics.
We can't breathe CO2, not unless we all become trees.
Right.
And so how about you, Adam? Where can we find the Road to Dharma series?
Yeah, well, first of all, the highest pass that people can find on Amazon, iTunes, the feature film from a few years back. And then The Road to Dharma, I fully shot, but I've edited the first episode and parts of the second to pitch. Basically, take it out to the networks and show them how it's meant to be. So it's in that process.
So you're in the process of pitching to the networks to get on to maybe a larger distribution panel. Are you pitching just here in the U.S. or are you also looking at European,
No,
global
I'm
markets?
looking at European always, but the main pitch will be here. Of course, I think the international market would be less of a pitch and more of I would bring in investors to finish it and then we'd sell eventually to the international market. But with this kind of series, I mean, sometimes people see wisdom or spirituality and they, in the network world, kind of back off. But for that reason is why I wanted to make a couple episodes and show them, look, it's also a show. You know, like this is your
There's
fully,
entertainment
there's
value.
entertainment.
Motorcycles.
It's motorcycles.
There's
There's
motorcycles.
divorce. You want to know what happens with the characters while you're gently getting in these jewels of wisdom. So for that reason, I took this path of editing a couple episodes.
So I want to bring a question back to you as a personal storyteller. You started out as a biker. Your interest was in motorcycles.
No, it wasn't.
No? You said you started out as a rider?
No, I had
How
never,
did that
I had never
happen?
ridden a motorcycle in my life. I
Oh,
thought they
wow.
were stupid, they were scary. But yoga was meditation, and when I say yoga, it's more than wisdom and meditation and philosophy. I had studied with my teacher in India for many years, and then one day he said, "You want to go over the highest road in the world on motorcycles?" Knowing I have no desire, but to go with him into the Himalayas is a dream. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So, so not a motorcycle, but
So you learned to
loving.
ride in India?
I learned to ride during that trip on one of the hardest roads in the world. And so it's really all about facing fear. And when we face death, when we face fear specifically in death, we gain life. That's the idea of that. In the series, it's more about facing specific things for freedom.
Specific, like what?
One would be death, one would be our perception of ourselves, one would be our perception of the world, and facing the fact that we do have a conditioned experience and letting that break down. facing the fact that our conditions many times dictate how we feel, and that's not the truth. You know, we don't have to be a victim of our conditions. You know, power comes from somewhere else. One of the peaks gets into the power of the gap, the silence between, the not knowing, the power of the mystery, or how much is in the mystery, in the gap. That's called tongue knot. That peak is. If you've ever seen grown men cry, this is what happens. You know, like for no reason up on this Himalayan mountain, just crying for no reason.
Wow.
Just power.
Or not no reason, overwhelmed by the experience.
Something, some mystery, some power.
So you're taking the first episode is called Road to Dharma, or is it Road to Dharma episode 1?
The whole series is called The Road to Dharma. So episode 1.
Episode 1.
In fact, this season will be called The Four Sacred Peaks, and we plan on doing many seasons.
The Four Sacred Peaks.
But
Great.
The Road to Dharma is the bucket, if you will, that holds it all together.
Okay. And aside from the film festival, are you taking this first episode anywhere else, or can our online?
This is the
people
only
listen
place
to it exclusively?
anyone can or ever will be able to see this episode until it's fully out there.
Until it's distributed.
Yeah,
And
so
you're
that's
doing that.
yeah. So this is a unique little thing. I was really happy Sky and I were talking about. I have a film that's releasing in LA next weekend called Heal, using the mind and thoughts, emotions to heal the body. And we were going to have it here, but because it's releasing next week, we couldn't do it.
So that's in theaters in LA?
Yeah, next week. Yeah, the last week.
Nice. We love the
Deepak
Lemley.
Chopra's in that and all that. But as we got to talking, I told her I had this and I had never shown it, so we agreed to, let it out there, leak it out there a little bit.
So this is a sort of little juicy preview.
It's a juicy, buzzy
the
preview.
The series isn't even available now. Yeah. Hear that, Facebook world?
My producer now, right there.
Can they reach you through Facebook or through your website?
Yeah, the website would be roadtodharma.com. The trailer's on there. It tells you a little bit about the site. And also, one of the impact around the series is for meditation. It inspires people to meditate. So there's some inspiring things about meditation and who meditates that you wouldn't think does.
And that actually brings me to my next question for you.
Right.
How does a kid from Detroit end up studying in India?
Metro Detroit.
Yoga?
Not really.
You're not from 8 Mile.
9 miles.
9 miles.
It is a really big difference. It's the funny thing. How does that happen?
Yeah. What was your transition? Did your parents do yoga? Did you have a community, or was this something you found on your own?
Found through various times. Once I found meditation, I was all about it, and it just became a thread through my life, be it improv comedy or coaching soccer, and then eventually, it's the underbelly, it's the river underneath the filmmaking, and so it just so happened that I moved toward documentary films, from writing and producing toward documentary, and I stayed in documentary for the last 8 years.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's it.
Do we have any follow-up questions from our audience members?
I would like to, Sarah, I have a phone discussion here, I'm sorry, but I get the personal connection and found yourself there in the podcast with your spider film. Before that, I guess the first part of my question is, before that moment when you just kind of were suddenly there and you don't know, did you have any thought that you wanted to know about it or investigate it, or was it just kind of a product of just the happenstance that you were in that film festival?
Like, actually, I was a film student still at the time, and it all started because I saw a film, an animated film, Israeli animated film that I liked a lot. It's called Beton. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's a nice animation that's sort of also critical about the occupation situation there. And I saw this film and got very inspired, and I asked my school if I could go to Israel, to this school, and do an exchange semester. So that's the real starting point. And my school said, "Oh, yeah, that's a nice idea, but we don't have a relation with the school yet. So we don't know how to facilitate this. But we know of this festival, so you can send your film to this festival, and if you get accepted, you could go to that at least." So that was.
Okay. So now I would like our filmmakers to discuss a little bit of the process. You sort of touched on that, being a student, studying film, and then transitioning into being a filmmaker. I'm sure there are members in our audience and Facebook world audience that would like to turn their stories into films. And maybe you could speak about how you were inspired to enter the genre of film, and maybe a few tips for those out there that are maybe have a good idea about an issue or have a personal experience that they want to turn into a film. Let's start with that.
I think personal experience is a fantastic way to approach filmmaking. In college, when I would write best from experience. I was not the greatest writer in general at all, but when I write from experience, people around me would light up because it's real, it's got feeling, and something's going on, and I think we seek a little more truth than I don't know, fiction than fiction sometimes delivers. So that's why I love documentary, and from experience I think is amazing. In terms of tips, gosh, I don't have a lot of tips other than in the doc world. I think it's more of a discipline than people might know. It's just a real discipline thing. Creativity, I think in general, is discipline. Through the process, through the work, much like yoga and meditation, there's a process to it, there's time, and then you get hit with creativity, at least for me. Creativity comes sometimes in the gap, in the silence, but there's a lot of just work. And people might just think it's this creative thing all the time. And so my tip is to know when you're stepping into at least the doc world, like you're stepping into a lot of effort also. So you're gonna grow a ton if you want to. That's the coolest thing. With any of these doc projects, you learn a lot, you grow a lot, and that's why I love doing what I do. It's not easy.
Yeah. So would you say a daily practice, a dedicated time to at least, even if you don't have, film partners or producers yet, a daily time to focus on your idea or craft, your script, something that would get you in touch with it every day is what leads to your inspiration?
I don't know about that other than just knowing that it takes work and time and effort, and then the sparks happen. That's key. Because everyone's job might be different, where they can't do it every day.
Right.
Maybe it's their weekends, that's fine, or maybe you can take a month off, or who knows, or raise some money.
To just do it.
To just do it.
So however you do it, put it on your calendar. If it's once a week, or if it's right.
Or just start small. But the biggest tip is to realize it's a discipline. The gems come. Have faith.
Basically, take the leap of faith.
Yeah, practice faith throughout the process. Because if nothing else, you at least develop faith. Even if your project's never seen, you develop faith.
It's a big drive for me. You said be curious, and I think that's, especially for documentary film, that's really key. And doing it for the right reasons, I think. I've taught over the years, and I've met students who are like, I want to make a short film so I can make my feature film. It's like, well, but do you have a story you want to tell? Because really that comes first. And it's great if it's a personal story, it doesn't have to be. But I think it does have to be a story that you really do want to tell. And that you're doing it for the story and the process. Not because you're like, I think I'm going to tell this story because it'll get into the most festivals, it'll meet the most people, it'll make the most money. Don't do that. It's not. For Climate Countdown, for instance, I'd been working in animation for a long time, actually, and wanted to start making my own work that was more politically and socially engaged. And I didn't know anything about climate, but it just struck me that I need to do something about this. I was like, I want to be in Paris doing something. And I don't know what it's going to be, but this feels important to me, and I want to be a part of it. So I just started knocking on doors and talking to people, and it kind of built, and sure enough, I was in Paris, and now I'm going to COP23 in a couple weeks, so it'll be my third COP. I'm consulting for the World Bank now on climate content. I've been to all sorts of high-level conferences, and it's just from doing that thing of like, I want to do this, and I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know who's going to see it. It might just be that I learned, like the worst thing is that I'll learn a lot about the climate change and solutions, so I'll do it. And I think that's a big part of it. It's like really just doing it for the right reasons. If you have a story you feel like you have to tell, like tell it. You don't have to wait for funding. You don't have to wait for the red epic camera to shoot it on. Like,
Yeah, these days we've all got.
yeah. Although I will say, good sound. Don't skimp on that. You need the good sound. Like you can have, shaky camera, pixelated, and it's it could be an interesting choice, but bad sound is never an interesting choice.
Yes,
That's my
agreed. If everyone's going, huh?
Yeah.
What did they just say? Right, you've lost them.
And although you don't have sound, make a silent film. Also a great option.
Subtitles, people, subtitles.
Be creative.
Wonderful. So how about you? What would you say to young filmmakers in our audience that are perhaps thinking about jumping into the world of filmmaking?
Yeah, like also from working from personal experience, it's like I thought about it being like a shortcut. Then when I started doing it, I found out, of course, it's not. But it was still like a good idea. I thought, because I'm from animation and mostly narrative, I thought, I don't need to write a script. I just write whatever I remember. But it's still a lot of work. But it's also, for me, working from my own experience, it's something like no one else can take it away from me. And no one can tell me I'm wrong.
Right, it's yours. It's your viewpoint, your subjective viewpoint. So while you were in Israel, did you keep a journal? Did you take notes? Did you make little recordings to inspire yourself? Or how did you found out you actually do need a script for a documentary to make sense?
Yeah.
Or a format at least. So how did you do that? How did you address that?
I mean, while I was on the strip, I had a camera mostly to take like tourist memory photos and just filming stuff. I didn't have an idea back then, but it was actually when I came home that I started writing. I started trying to remember like what I did during the days and how I felt and what I experienced. And I did it for a couple of weeks. So I started out writing and then started writing.
So what would you say to our young filmmakers? What's your best tip there?
My best tip is to just hold on to an idea that you have and work and go through with it until the end.
Love the inspiration. I love your point that we all have filmmaking in our pocket these days. We have so many platforms, we have so many cameras and recording devices, and we have computing power, that can launch satellites in the palm of our hands. So it's really amazing what we can do.
Could launch satellite.
They're using these at NASA, right?
That's true. That's funny.
Which is, well, to me, the world of technology offers so many advantages, but then as we see with an issue like climate change, it also comes with a cost. It comes with a price tag, the rare earth elements. I heard something actually in 2005 that they recycle these so assiduously because the elements that go into making the smartphones work are basically gone. They can't find them anymore. They've mined out whatever they know exists on this planet, and countries like China and India are actually doing some pretty bad ecological things in pursuit of what they call these rare earth elements. And this is your throwaway Christmas item now. So we are really at a point, I think, globally where, in my mind, it's a level of maturity. When you're 5, you're not going to have a big world view. You're going to dig up your own backyard, make mud pies, and you're not going to care how the neighbors think about it. But when you get older, you recognize, what I do affects other people. And I think as a society, we have to become more mature than what the culture of consumerism possibly has us, aiming for these days.
I think long term and sustainably, I've heard the same thing about. That's part of the solution making process as well, is making sure that the solutions are sustainable.
Right.
And long term solutions and not just stopgap quick fixes.
Because I remember in the 70s, not to age myself, but as a young lass in the 70s with hippie parents, and they were all about organic farming and healthy and trying to cut back on emissions. At that point, I remember my parents, going to rallies about, the car makers didn't want emissions tests for the cars because it was going to cost them so much money to turn a screw in a carburetor and, you know, not have it instantly kill you or whatever. And you know, people moved on that, and industry had to respond. And climate change seems now sort of like the big fish. That was like the goldfish. We thought the auto industry was a big deal to get emissions inspections and get cars that are cleaner, and now we have hybrids. We were just talking on the way in here. I want my zero emissions, you know, fuel cell that only produces clean water and oxygen as its byproduct.
They're coming. They're coming.
They're here.
Yeah.
Toyota,
Yeah.
which, you know, say what you will versus, you know, I'm a little car head, I'll warn you. I'm an American girl. I love my Dodges, but Toyota has been a world leader always in fuel efficiency and emissions, and they have now available to the market, commercial market here in the U.S., or I'm sorry, consumer market, the Mirai.
Yeah, I know.
And it's out, right? And it's sort of like when you watch the surfing competitions, you know the leader of the pack because he's always on the crest of the wave, right? And that's Toyota. They're always in that vein. They're always like, I'm not going to look at what the pack is doing. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to lead them? I remember back in the 80s, you know, everyone laughed at Toyota because their cars were so ugly and looked like little spaceships and nobody wanted them. But then they all found out the gas mileage and the emissions, and they last forever. And all of a sudden, ooh, here's Toyota is a behemoth in the market. So in your mind, I know your whole series is about solutions, but you know, I don't want to water it down, but can you give us maybe, and like, is there a market indicator? Is there a consumer indicator that might show us where the change, where, you know, where the leaders are going to emerge, getting us away from fossil fuels?
Well, I mean, you're seeing a lot of companies. Toyota's one. I heard the guy who's in charge of the Mirai talk. They're trying to, you know, make their whole supply chain less emission heavy. So they're not just focused on making cars that help consumers be. They're looking holistically. There's Mars just came out with a big announcement of decarbonizing their supply chain because they see they're reliant on cocoa beans.
Right.
And they want to be relevant in 30 years. So you do see certain companies, obviously Tesla is a big one too, and Elon Musk has kind of got his hands in all sorts of things, batteries and cars. You're seeing that the big companies that are being smart know that it's not just morally and ethically right to do something. It's actually economic sense. Bring it back a little bit to the film that's showing here about carbon pricing. There's a whole carbon pricing leadership coalition right now with lots of heads and CEOs of companies. A lot of businesses are actually, they're working carbon pricing into their business model. So they are pricing carbon internally already because they know, I mean, there are, like, California has a cap and trade, the Northeast does, Canada has carbon tax, China is about to have a whole countrywide cap and trade. So there's a lot of carbon pricing happening. The EU has it. Businesses know that the prices are only going to go up, and there's going to be more and more, and so they're already planning ahead, the smart ones. So I think, from my perspective, the more that individuals and just everyday people can know what carbon pricing is and why.
Can you just give us a little on that? 'Cause
Yeah.
I'd like everyone maybe that doesn't know the terminology. What is carbon pricing?
So basically, it corrects a kind of a market failure, they say. So fossil fuels, they talk about them, you know, that renewables are too expensive, things like solar power and wind energy. But really, fossil fuels are artificially cheap because
They get subsidies.
They get subsidies. That's kind of separate issue, but yes.
Oh, okay.
They pollute. There's all these emissions, and the emissions, the people that are making oil and selling oil and getting, excavating oil, they don't have to pay for the cost of the emissions of all the pollution.
Right.
The taxpayers pay. There's a storm that has links to climate change. The taxpayers in the insurance market has to handle that. Health costs. The taxpayers end up bearing the brunt of the cost of this pollution, and the polluters make the profit. So the idea is transferring that cost and saying, actually, this isn't cheap. It's artificially cheap because you're not taking into account all of the damage it costs.
I see.
So if you want to omit that, you're going to have to pay up front for the damage that it will cost because it's not on us. So it's the idea of just shifting who's paying.
So this is sort of just an economic formula,
It's
really.
It's very simple. It's very elegant, which is why I think is why I like it.
Okay. But now let me ask you a challenging question.
Yeah.
I'm ExxonMobil. I've got billions of dollars with a B, and I don't care. I don't care that I'm killing the planet. I don't care that every single oil rig I dig is going to leak and pollute forever, because this is like, once the well is tapped, it's never sealed. Like, we literally do not have that technology to put it back in the ground. Trees do, but we do not. So I'm ExxonMobil. I don't care. I can afford the price tag, and I just pay my fee, and I lobby to get that fee as low as possible. And the planet keeps suffering, the storms keep happening, people dying in Puerto Rico, not our president's problem. So is climate, like, what do you call carbon pricing? You call it an elegant solution, but I'm not really buying that. It's not an actual solution for the ones who are invested in keeping the rigged game going. How do we get them, like, to actually change, like Toyota has changed into their zero emissions model? How do we get these big polluters who can afford the price tag of carbon payments to actually care about the real damage?
It's not so much, well, that's the thing, is it's not really, I don't hold out a lot of hope for making ExxonMobil care. I'm not sure if that'll happen. That might happen, maybe,
right.
But this is more about changing the economics of it.
Okay.
So that what they're doing becomes the more expensive thing and actually shifts the market so that wind power, solar power are the cheaper options.
So they get the economic advantage that coal and fossil fuels have.
Exactly, and the consumer, suddenly you're not having to be like, well, ethically I want to own an electric car, but it's more expensive. It's actually just the cheapest thing. So my thinking, I would love if everyone cared. I think that would be the best option. I don't think everyone will care quick enough because our timeline is very short. So I think the quickest way to really shift the market, and again, it's not the only solution. You need all the other solutions happening too. And this is just, it elevates everything. So if you can shift the market forces, carbon pricing is the thing that will do that. And then it's not about the ethical choice, the moral choice. It's just the financial, economic choice. And I think if you look at our history, that tends to be what changes people's behavior. So it might not be the most, like, the nicest thought, but I think it's the quickest way to get the most efficient shift. You need the carbon pricing in place.
Right.
And then you need to keep doing all the other work because there's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
But you're right as well that the price needs to be high enough to matter, and that's a big thing. Because there's a lot of people that are pricing carbon, but it's like $10 a ton, and it's like that doesn't mean that much really. So people are working to make that higher.
Right. And so the companies have to pay this tariff, I guess, or fee, whatever it is. And so then, what does that money do? Does it become a subsidy to the green energy sector directly, or does it go to rehabilitating oil spills? Or, I mean, where's the connection to remediating?
I'm gonna plug my film.
Please do.
Because that's a very complicated question. And really, what I would love people to walk away from this film and from Climate Countdown in general is just understanding this concept of making the polluter pay for the costs of the polluter. That we shouldn't be paying for that, they should be. So we need to put a price on the carbon emissions so that we're not bearing those costs. That part is very simple and elegant, and I think anyone kind of goes, that's very fair.
Makes sense.
It's unfair the way we've been doing it. Once you decide on that, there's a lot of different ways to price carbon. And what you just asked, there's a lot of debate about where the money should go. And that's, so if you're like, this is a cool idea and I want to learn more, learn more. It's fascinating. But there's no
At climatecountdown.org.
Yes. Is that
.org.
I'm just gonna put it.
It's got to be.
But yeah, it's fascinating. Learn more. And the great thing is, like, there's lots of different ways to do it. So different countries can do it in different ways. You know, companies can do it in different ways. States can do it in different ways. They are doing it in different ways. So it's not like everyone has to do it the same. But I think everyone does have to put a price on it. That's definitely
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, and your goal for the series obviously would be education,
Yeah.
and hopefully you said you're talking to some of these sort of major players
Yeah.
in the world, you know, conversation about this. So hopefully maybe the more the consumer gets involved, the more demand, the more people sort of line up for this, that those larger organizations and world governments will be swayed by the
Yeah.
action of people.
Yeah, I think you need bottom to top, top to bottom. You know, I think you need these big Paris Agreement pricing carbon solutions, and you need people to kind of take ownership in their own life.
Individually.
But I think in the past the onus has been put on the consumer. Like, you should be making the right choices, but it's hard if the system that you live in is. If you live in LA and you have to drive a car, it's hard to. Then you just feel guilty.
Right. Right.
So then it's like, well, what can I do to change the system so that my choices become easier, and that making that choice is not a financial hardship or a difficulty in my life. It's just the easiest thing to do. So I think you have to work at it from both angles, and that's what we're kind of trying to do, is show that there's lots of different entry points into this, but we really do need everyone at least aware of how they fit in.
And I'm going to throw you a little non sequitur, but this is something that's just a question that's always fascinated me. I've read a few articles recently about how, well, you know, we call this the first world, and, you know, underdeveloped countries, third world. You know, I think that's a little loaded vernacular right there. But countries that don't have the infrastructure that was built on fossil fuels in the 1900s. Like, we're driving around today, your brand new BMW burns 1900s technology. That's what we're driving. Doesn't matter how slick and shiny it is, you're driving a gas explosion down the highway.
Yeah.
And this was invented by Ford in, you know, the turn of the last century. So how do we, like, or maybe what have your indicators been? It seems to me like a country that doesn't have our infrastructure may have an advantage of plugging in renewables, because they're not in, like, in the US we're sort of bound into this structure of, like, well, we have our energy grid and we have our transportation grids, and if we take all the Mack trucks off the highway, who's going to get food to the grocery store? We are sort of working to dismantle while assembling a new way of doing it.
Yeah.
Are there indicators in developing countries that they're sort of skipping over our mistakes with fossil fuels and going right into renewables that are better, like, right away, they're better on the ground for the general populace?
Yes, yeah, and really that's what the Paris Agreement showed, was that China came in on it, India is in on it, and they're two of the biggest emitters now because they're growing so quickly. And China has shut down most of its coal plants. India has agreed. I mean, it's a very complicated and loaded question, which we cover in season 1, because there is basically developed countries have been emitting for 100 years, and now we're telling countries that are becoming richer and developing, and their citizens are, you know, being able to have more money and live a better life in that way. We're saying, no, you can't develop like we did because this is bad, which is true, but it's a very hard thing to say,
right?
Because we've created this problem, and now we're saying, no, you have to help us solve it, but they hold no responsibility, and also they're the most vulnerable. So it's a very complicated, and that's why we didn't get a Paris Agreement until the 21st COP summit, because it was really that problem, the developed versus the developing world. Who has the responsibility to act and to pay? It's all about money as well. So right now, that's what they're doing at COP22 and COP23 and COP24, is they're figuring
all
out,
that out. Okay.
well, now who's paying for it, and how can we help developing countries so that they're not just
Maybe
not,
incentivize them.
and actually financially help them too.
Is the World Bank doing anything?
World Bank is doing a lot.
Okay.
They just announced something at the General Assembly at the UN. And they released a study as well recently saying that the market in terms of investment, there's trillions of dollars.
This male ego, and then he got into spirituality and thought he was doing so well, but he'd get in the car and just be like, and everybody, and then he realized, oh my goodness, when his daughter was in the car with him, and she was a young girl, like 7 or 8 years old, and he's spouting all of this anger and vitriol, and he realized, he just kind of looked at her, and he realized he had that moment of, my spiritual practice is paper thin if I can't maintain it when I go out among people. So I think there's a level that I love films like this that bring us into that space where we are doing our own personal practice and then applying that to our global relationships. Like you said, peace starts in your family, peace starts with your relationships, and then it grows from there.
And awareness, which
Right.
is the name of this festival. I think being aware of how your individual life or individual conflict or your country's conflict fits into the history of that and the world and how they relate and connect and kind of your place within the wider world. Not to make your experience unimportant, because it's very important, but having an awareness of the whole as well as the parts of it.
And where we integrate or where we fit into that, where my practice, sustains me, and that's good for my personal relationships when I can transmute my, say, outrage at what's going on in the world to political action or activism or filmmaking, and I don't have to take that home at night and let it spill over into my personal family relationships, but lots of people do. So that's where the awareness comes in. But we're running into the end of our time here. I would field one last brief question from the audience, if you guys have any. One last question, last one.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base with you to say, I'm sorry we didn't have more time. I would have asked you a little bit more about how the history is playing into the house and that part, which I think you don't have time for. But I just wanted to say,
Well, is it in your film? Do you touch on the history of the conflict in the film?
Not so much about the conflict, only more about my personal family history and history of the European Polish Jews.
well, and that kind of connects with what I also wanted to say, which is to me, there's the side which is the personal change, like human beings, that we need to change, individuals need to change, and how we relate to each other, we need to change. And then it goes on the other angle is systems affect so deeply and profoundly how we experience ourselves. So changing systems to promote the kinds of personal create, which is what we're trying to do. So I just see that because I'm not going to ask
It's fine.
It all
That's
plays a
fine.
part, right? You films like that, films like that, films like that.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So if you would each like to just give a little close, a little wrap up to our
Absolutely not.
Facebook audience. No, Facebook, he's out. He's giving you nothing. Yeah. Just tell us what your hopes are for the film and just a little goodbye.
Sure. I'd love you to come see the film on Sunday at 2 o'clock. It's called Road to Dharma. Again, motorcycling, using an outward adventure and experience to really deepen the wisdom and lessons that we all might meditate upon, but then we put in practice. So, love for you to come see it. You can see the website, and soon it'll be on a network. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd love for you to watch some of the episodes if you're interested that we've already made, and stay tuned for season 2. It's gonna
And
be
where did these see this episode?
climatecountdown.org. But yeah, we're very excited for season 2, so I hope you stay tuned, and we're trying to build just a network of people who want to act on climate, so hopefully you'll join us.
Yeah, so I'm screening the film here at 4. So everyone's welcome to that. And hopefully I will also be able to put my film online. But I don't know, sometime next year. Exactly. Because I'm still submitting to festivals. There's also going to have a short theater run in Sweden. We have a program where we show short films just before feature films. That's awesome.
we used to do. So is there somewhere they can reach you on Facebook or a website if anyone wants to get in touch with you?
So the easiest way is just to, let's see, I have a Facebook page for my film. So if you just type in The Bus Trip on Facebook, it should pop up.
Nice.
The Bus Trip, and just say your full name as the director.
Sarah Gamble.
Sarah Gamble, The Bus Trip. Adam
Schomer, Road to Dharma.
Dharma.
Kai Rose, and we're Climate Countdown on Facebook, and Klima Countdown on Twitter, because we ran out of words and letters.
Okay. Well, thank you to our filmmakers, thank you to our audience, and everybody. Yeah, come out to Awareness Festival. We're doing good work out here.